A moment when you realize that disrespect does not begin with the loud voice across the room, but with the quiet doubt you allow to live inside yourself. The Stoics understood something powerful long before our time. No one can truly diminish you unless you first surrender the dignity that already belongs to you. People will test your patience, your silence, and your worth, but their behavior is only a mirror of who they are, not a measure of who you are. And when you finally learn to stand in the calm strength of your own value, something remarkable happens. The world begins to feel the quiet gravity of your presence. Today, we will explore 6 Stoic rules that will help you reclaim that inner authority, so that the next time someone attempts to disrespect you, they will not meet anger nor weakness, but a spirit so grounded, so self-assured, that disrespect simply has no place to stand. There is a quiet power that lives within every human being, though many go their entire lives without fully discovering it. It is not loud, it does not shout, and it does not beg for attention. It lives in the way you carry yourself, in the tone of your voice, and in the calm certainty of your presence. This power is called self-respect. The Stoics believed that before the world can treat you with dignity, you must first learn to see your own worth with clear and steady eyes. Because the truth is simple yet often forgotten, people often treat you the way you silently teach them to treat you. When a person doubts their own value, that doubt begins to show in the smallest ways. It appears in the way they tolerate words that wound them, the way they laugh at jokes meant to belittle them, and the way they remain in places where their spirit feels small. Disrespect does not always arrive with cruelty. Sometimes it slips quietly into our lives through small dismissals, careless words, and moments when others assume we will accept less than we deserve. And when we continue to accept those moments without question, we unknowingly give permission for them to grow. But self-respect changes that silent agreement. The moment you begin to truly honor yourself, something within you shifts. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth to those who refuse to see it. You no longer chase approval like a thirsty traveler chasing rain in the desert. Instead, you stand firmly in the understanding that your value does not rise or fall with someone else's opinion. This quiet confidence sends a message stronger than any argument ever could. The Stoics often spoke about the importance of inner authority. They believed that your peace, your dignity, and your character belong to you alone. No insult can steal them unless you open the door and invite it inside. When you respect yourself deeply, disrespect from others begins to lose its power. Their words may still reach your ears, but they will no longer reach your soul. You will see their behavior for what it truly is, a reflection of their own character, not a judgment of yours. And there is something remarkable about a person who carries themselves with this quiet dignity. They do not need to demand respect with force or anger. They do not need to raise their voice or prove their strength through conflict. Their presence alone speaks clearly. People sense the boundaries, the calm confidence, and the deep understanding that this is someone who knows their worth. In the end, self-respect is not about pride or arrogance. It is about recognizing that your life, your voice, and your spirit matter. When you begin to treat yourself with care, patience, and dignity, you set a silent standard for everyone around you. And slowly, almost without noticing, the world begins to respond to that standard. Because when you truly respect yourself, you stop accepting anything that asks you to become smaller than you were meant to be. There is a quiet trap that many people fall into without ever realizing it. It is the endless search for approval, the desire to be liked, to be accepted, to be praised by everyone around us. At first, it seems harmless. After all, we are human, and humans naturally wish to belong. But the Stoics understood something deeply important. The moment you begin living for the approval of others, you slowly surrender the authority over your own life. And when that happens, disrespect finds an easy place to grow. When your happiness depends on other people's opinions, you begin to bend yourself into shapes that were never meant for you. You silence your true thoughts so no one feels uncomfortable. You tolerate behavior that wounds your dignity simply to avoid conflict. You laugh when you feel like speaking. You stay when your heart is asking you to walk away. In these small moments, piece by piece, you begin trading your self-respect for temporary acceptance, and the world quietly notices. The truth is that seeking approval places your worth in the hands of people who may not even understand their own. Some will praise you today and criticize you tomorrow. Some will admire you as long as you agree with them, but turn away the moment you choose your own path. If your peace depends on these shifting opinions, your spirit will never find rest. You will always be chasing something that moves like the wind. The Stoics believe that true freedom begins the moment you release that chase. When you stop asking, "Do they approve of me?" and begin asking, "Am I living according to my values?" something powerful changes within you. Your decisions become clearer, your voice becomes steadier, and the fear of disapproval slowly loses its grip on your heart. A person who no longer seeks constant validation becomes very difficult to disrespect, not because they are harsh or unkind, but because their worth no longer depends on the approval of others. Insults lose their sting when they come from someone whose opinion you no longer rely upon. Disrespect loses its weight when you understand that another person's judgment cannot define your character. This does not mean you stop listening to others or that you become indifferent to every voice around you. Wisdom still values guidance, learning, and thoughtful conversation. But there is a difference between listening and begging, between learning and surrendering your identity. A strong person can hear criticism without letting it destroy their confidence. And when you truly let go of the need to please everyone, a surprising thing happens. Your presence becomes more authentic. Your words carry more honesty. The people who truly respect you begin to draw closer, while those who only valued your obedience slowly drift away. What remains is something far more valuable than approval: genuine respect. In the end, you were never meant to be loved by everyone. No person in history has ever carried that burden successfully, but you were meant to live with integrity, to walk your path with courage, and to honor the truth within you. And the moment you stop begging the world to approve of you is the moment you begin standing tall enough that disrespect can no longer reach your soul. There comes a time in every person's life when kindness alone is no longer enough. Not because kindness is weak, but because kindness without boundaries can invite those who mistake gentleness for permission. The Stoics understood that dignity must be protected the same way a garden is protected by its fence. Without that fence, even the most beautiful garden can be trampled without intention. In the same way, when we fail to set clear limits in our lives, people may step into spaces where respect should have stood. Many people fear boundaries because they worry it will make them seem harsh or unkind. They believe that saying no, stepping away, or correcting disrespect will cause others to dislike them, so they remain silent. They tolerate words that sting and behavior that slowly erodes their peace. They convince themselves that patience alone will change the situation. But patience without limits does not teach people how to treat you. It simply teaches them how much you are willing to endure. The Stoic mind approaches life differently. It understands that boundaries are not weapons used to hurt others. They are quiet declarations of self-respect. They are the calm and steady lines that say, "This is where my dignity stands." A boundary does not need to be loud, dramatic, or filled with anger. In fact, the strongest boundaries are often spoken with calm clarity, a simple refusal, a calm correction, a quiet decision to walk away from what no longer honors you. When you begin to set these limits, something interesting happens. At first, some people may resist. Those who benefited from your silence may feel uncomfortable with your strength. They may question you, challenge you, or try to convince you that you are changing. And in truth, you are. You are changing from someone who quietly absorbs disrespect into someone who calmly refuses it. But boundaries also have another powerful effect. They reveal the true nature of the people around you. Those who respect you will adjust. They will understand your limits and honor them. But those who only valued your compliance may drift away when they realize they can no longer cross those lines. And while that may feel difficult at first, it is often a necessary clearing of space in your life. The Stoics believed that peace comes not from controlling other people's behavior, but from controlling your own responses and choices. You cannot force others to behave with respect, but you can decide what behavior you will allow to remain in your life, and that decision alone carries immense power. A person with clear boundaries walks through the world with a quiet sense of authority. They do not need to argue endlessly or defend their worth. Their actions speak with calm consistency. When something crosses the line of respect, they respond with clarity. When a situation refuses to change, they have the courage to remove themselves from it. In the end, boundaries are not walls that isolate you from the world. They are walls of dignity that protect the sacred space of your self-respect. And when those walls are built with calm strength and steady courage, something beautiful begins to happen. People learn exactly where your dignity stands, and once that line is clear, fewer will dare to cross it. There is a moment, small but powerful, that appears whenever someone disrespects you. It is the space between what happens and how you answer it. Most people never notice this moment. They move so quickly from insult to reaction that their emotions take control before their wisdom has a chance to speak. Anger rises, words spill out, and suddenly the situation grows louder, harsher, and more painful than it ever needed to be. The Stoics spent their lives studying this very moment because they understood that true strength lives inside that pause. When someone disrespects you, your first impulse may be to react immediately. Your pride feels wounded, your patience feels tested, and your mind begins searching for the sharpest response it can find. But reactions often belong to emotion rather than reason. They are quick, fiery, and temporary, and while they may feel powerful in the moment, they often leave behind regret, misunderstanding, or unnecessary conflict. A reaction gives your peace away to the very person who tried to disturb it. To respond, however, is something entirely different. A response is calm. It is thoughtful. It is controlled by your character rather than by the situation in front of you. When you respond instead of react, you show that your emotions are not easily commanded by the behavior of others. You demonstrate that your dignity does not collapse at the first sign of disrespect. Instead, it remains steady, like a mountain standing firm against a passing storm. The Stoics believe that the greatest form of power is self-mastery, not the power to dominate others, but the power to govern your own mind. Because when someone can provoke you into anger, they gain a small control over your behavior. But when you remain calm, when you take that quiet pause before answering, you keep that control firmly within yourself. This does not mean you must accept disrespect in silence. Silence is not always wisdom, but the difference lies in the spirit behind your words. A response can still be firm. It can still correct someone who has crossed a line. Yet it carries a calm clarity rather than emotional chaos. It says what must be said without losing dignity in the process. And there is something deeply disarming about a calm person in the presence of disrespect. When someone expects anger and instead meets composure, their words lose much of their power. They may have hoped to provoke you, to shake your balance, to pull you into conflict. But your calm response denies them that victory. Over time, this practice transforms not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. You begin to trust your ability to remain steady in difficult moments. You begin to realize that your peace does not have to rise and fall with every careless word spoken around you. Your mind becomes quieter, stronger, and more grounded. In the end, responding rather than reacting is not about winning an argument. It is about protecting something far more valuable, your inner peace. When you master that brief pause between event and response, you take back the authority over your emotions. And once that authority belongs to you, disrespect from others can no longer control the direction of your spirit. There are moments in life when the greatest strength a person can show is not in staying, arguing, or trying to prove their worth. Sometimes the greatest strength is simply the courage to walk away. This idea may feel difficult at first because many of us have been taught that leaving means giving up, that stepping back means we have lost. But the Stoics saw this very differently. They understood that there are places, conversations, and relationships where respect no longer lives. And in those moments, staying often costs more than leaving ever could. Many people remain in situations that slowly diminish their spirit. They endure dismissive words, repeated disrespect, and environments that make them feel smaller than they truly are. At first, they stay because they hope things will change. They believe that if they explain themselves better, try harder, or show more patience, the other person will finally understand their value. But respect that must be begged for is rarely given with sincerity. And the longer a person stays in such places, the more their inner peace begins to fade. The Stoics believed that dignity should never depend on the approval of those who refuse to see your worth. When a space becomes filled with constant disrespect, the wisest decision is not always to fight louder or defend yourself endlessly. Sometimes wisdom whispers something simpler. You do not belong in places that continually dishonor your peace. Walking away does not mean you are weak. In truth, it often requires far more strength than staying. It asks you to release the need to win every argument. It asks you to accept that some people may never understand you, no matter how clearly you speak. And it asks you to trust that your value does not shrink simply because someone else refuses to recognize it. There is also a quiet grace in leaving without bitterness. When people feel disrespected, their first instinct is often to respond with anger. They want to prove a point, to say the final word, to make sure the other person feels the weight of their frustration. But anger has a way of tying you to the very situation you wish to escape. Grace, on the other hand, frees you. Freeze. When you walk away calmly, you protect your dignity in a way that no argument ever could. Your silence speaks louder than endless explanations. Your absence becomes the boundary that words failed to create. And often, the people who once dismissed your presence begin to feel the quiet impact of that absence. More importantly, walking away gives you something priceless: space. Space to breathe, space to heal, space to place your energy in environments that recognize your value rather than question it. Life is far too short to spend it constantly defending your right to be respected. The Stoics understood that peace is one of the most valuable treasures a person can protect. And sometimes the most direct path to that peace is the simple, powerful decision to remove yourself from places that disturb it. In the end, walking away with grace is not an act of defeat. It is an act of self-respect. It is the quiet declaration that your dignity is not negotiable. And when you carry that understanding within you, you no longer fear leaving the places that cannot honor your worth, because you know that your peace will always be waiting on the other side of that door. There is a quiet power in living a life where your actions speak more loudly than your words. Many people believe that to be respected, they must explain themselves, justify their choices, or constantly defend their worth. The Stoics understood that true authority and dignity do not come from argument or speech. They come from character. A person of integrity does not need to shout to be heard. Their consistency, their honesty, and the way they treat others without expectation create a presence that cannot be ignored or easily belittled. People feel it before they even hear it, and respect begins there. Character is forged in the small, often unseen choices we make every day. It is in the way we handle disappointment, in the patience we offer to those who are unkind, and in the steadiness we maintain when no one is watching. Integrity is not performed for applause. It is quiet, deliberate, and unwavering. A person who holds their character as sacred does not need to prove themselves at every turn, because their life itself is evidence of their value. Words may fade, opinions may shift, but character leaves an imprint that cannot be erased. When someone tries to belittle you, they often aim for the reaction your ego will give. They hope to shake your confidence, to provoke defensiveness, to plant doubt where certainty should live. But a person grounded in character is like a tree with deep roots. The wind may bend its branches, but it does not topple it. Others may speak, point, or criticize, but their words have little power over someone whose life is lived with honesty, humility, and self-respect. Integrity becomes the shield that holds firm even in the face of attempts to diminish you. Building character requires patience and courage because it asks us to choose long-term truth over short-term convenience. It asks us to act rightly even when others do not notice, even when our choices are inconvenient, and even when the world seems indifferent. But in that quiet dedication, something remarkable happens. Respect follows naturally, not the respect forced by fear or expectation, but the kind of respect that recognizes strength, wisdom, and authenticity. People may try to disrespect you, but they will sense the foundation you have built and hesitate because they feel the unspoken power of someone who refuses to compromise their integrity. There is also freedom in letting character lead. When your life is guided by honesty and moral courage, you no longer carry the weight of having to explain yourself constantly. You do not need to argue to prove your worth. Your actions, your consistency, and your values communicate the truth of who you are far more effectively than any argument ever could. And in this way, respect becomes a natural byproduct, not something you must chase. Ultimately, letting your character speak louder than your words is a declaration that your dignity cannot be taken, purchased, or negotiated. It says to the world that your worth is defined by your choices, your principles, and the integrity with which you walk through life. Others may try to belittle, dismiss, or challenge you, but the life you live becomes a statement too strong to ignore. When you live this way, respect no longer depends on external validation, and no act of disrespect can ever shake the quiet authority that comes from a life of unwavering character. There are people whose hearts are heavy with bitterness, envy, or fear. They walk through the world carrying smallness like a cloak, and often they try to drape it over everyone they meet. Their words may sting, their actions may wound, and their attitudes may attempt to shrink your spirit to fit the limits they have set for themselves. The Stoics understood that allowing the smallness of others to touch you is a choice, not an inevitability. You do not have to carry the weight of someone else's unhappiness, nor let their bitterness define the way you see yourself. It is easy to be drawn into someone else's negativity. Human empathy makes us susceptible to the moods and judgments of those around us. A careless word can echo in the mind, a slight gesture can linger in the heart, and before long, the poison of someone else's smallness begins to seep into your own sense of value. But you are not required to absorb it. You have the power to separate their limitations from your reality. One person's inability to celebrate your success does not diminish your achievements. One person's cynicism does not define your hope. One person's pettiness does not control your joy. The Stoics taught that the mind is the most sacred space you own. What enters it shapes your life far more than what happens outside of it. When you refuse to carry other people's smallness, you are protecting the most important possession you have, your own spirit. It requires awareness because the intrusion of negativity can be subtle. A frown disguised as advice, a criticism disguised as concern, a dismissive word disguised as humor, they all test the boundaries of your inner peace. Choosing not to carry these burdens is not arrogance. It is wisdom. It is understanding that your energy, your calm, and your joy are too valuable to be lent to someone else's unhappiness. By refusing to internalize someone else's bitterness, you reclaim your power. You decide what deserves space in your mind, what deserves weight in your heart, and what deserves nothing at all. You create a shield not against people, but against their inability to rise above their own limitations. And in doing so, you begin to live with a freedom that many never experience. You can move through life lightly, carrying only the thoughts, feelings, and intentions that belong to you. You no longer stumble under the invisible burdens others try to place on your back. This does not mean you cannot feel empathy or compassion. On the contrary, it allows you to be kind without being diminished. You can acknowledge another's struggle, offer understanding, and even lend support. But you do not let their bitterness take root in your soul. You walk beside them without becoming them. You shine without asking anyone to dim their light to match yours. Ultimately, refusing to carry other people's smallness is an act of liberation. It is a refusal to allow someone else's limitations to limit you. It is a statement that your spirit is yours alone, untouchable by the weight of another's negativity. When you embrace this, you walk through life with a grace and a strength that no disrespect, no insult, and no bitterness can ever tarnish. You rise above, not in pride, but in clarity, in dignity, and in the unwavering recognition of your own worth. True strength does not roar. It does not demand attention or prove itself with force. True strength is quiet, steady, and unshakable. The Stoics understood that the most powerful force in the world is a mind at peace. When your inner life is calm, you are no longer tossed by the winds of insult, the storms of criticism, or the small turbulence of someone else's opinion. Peace within becomes an unspoken armor, a sanctuary where no disrespect can enter. The first step toward this strength is learning to still your thoughts. Many people allow every slight, every careless word, and every judgment to echo endlessly in their minds. They replay conversations, dissect motives, and analyze every syllable as if their worth depended on it. But inner peace begins the moment you realize that thoughts are not commands. You do not have to chase every insult or dwell on every criticism. You can watch these thoughts pass by like clouds in the sky, observing them without letting them disturb your calm. When the mind is calm, responses become deliberate rather than reactive. Anger, frustration, and fear no longer control your voice or your actions. You do not need to raise your hand, your voice, or your emotions to prove yourself. Instead, you move through life with a quiet confidence, knowing that your value is not defined by anyone else's words. Calmness allows you to weigh situations with clarity. It gives you the space to see whether a comment deserves attention, whether it is worth addressing, or whether it simply belongs to someone else's smallness and not to your reality. Inner peace also teaches patience. It allows you to endure moments of disrespect without losing your composure. When others seek to provoke you, it is not because you are weak or naive, but because they are searching for a reaction that never comes. The calmer your mind, the less power their attempts have over you. You remain grounded, even when the world around you seems chaotic. You carry a sense of certainty that cannot be shaken by fleeting insults or passing judgments. This calmness does not mean passivity. It does not mean that you must silently accept harm or mistreatment. On the contrary, inner peace gives you the strength to act wisely, to set boundaries, and to make choices that protect your dignity. It gives you the courage to leave situations that do not honor your worth and to stand firm where respect and integrity prevail. A peaceful mind sees the world clearly, recognizes what belongs to it and what does not, and responds in ways that strengthen rather than weaken the spirit. Ultimately, the greatest power a person can possess is the ability to remain unshaken. When your mind is calm, no insult can wound you. When your spirit is grounded, no disrespect can pull you off course. Strength comes not from the loudness of your defense, but from the quietness of your inner life. It is a strength that cannot be challenged, a force that no chaos can overwhelm, and a freedom that no one can take away. In the sanctuary of your own peace, you become unbreakable, unmovable, and unshakably dignified. There is a rare and quiet power in rising with unshakable dignity. It is the kind of strength that does not need to announce itself, yet fills the room with a presence that is impossible to ignore. Many spend their lives trying to demand respect with words, with force, or with constant proof of their worth. But dignity does not beg, it does not shout, and it does not compete. It is born from the steady confidence of a soul that knows its own value, from a heart that refuses to let circumstance or opinion dictate its worth. When you rise with dignity, people sense it immediately. They feel the gravity of someone who cannot be diminished, and even without words, respect follows naturally. Rising with dignity begins with the way you carry yourself. It is in the way you walk into a room with calm awareness, not seeking approval, but simply existing in your own power. It is in the way you speak with measured tone, choosing clarity over reaction, truth over flattery, and calm over chaos. Dignity shows itself in patience, the patience to wait for the right moment, the patience to let others reveal their intentions, and the patience to hold your peace when others try to provoke you. A dignified presence is not hurried or desperate. It moves with deliberate grace, and in that movement, it commands attention. Dignity also grows from the choices you make in how you respond to disrespect. When insult or belittlement arrives, a person with unshakable dignity does not react in anger or defensiveness. They pause, they observe, and they respond with clarity if needed, or not at all if silence better preserves their authority. There is immense power in refusing to engage in petty conflicts. By rising above the trivial attempts to pull you down, you preserve not only your peace but your strength. Others may test you, push against you, or even try to diminish you, but dignity shields you in a way that nothing else can. Another key aspect of rising with dignity is consistency. It is not displayed only when convenient or in front of an audience. It is a habit of the soul. When you consistently act with integrity, honesty, and courage, people come to recognize the pattern of your character. They know that your presence is not swayed by circumstance, that your values are unwavering, and that your self-respect is non-negotiable. This consistency makes respect almost automatic, not because it is demanded, but because it is undeniable. Finally, dignity grows from self-awareness and self-respect. The person who truly knows their worth does not seek validation from others. They understand that external opinion cannot define their inner value. They carry themselves with quiet confidence, aware of their strengths and weaknesses, yet unafraid to stand tall regardless of who is watching. In this space, dignity becomes unshakable. It does not need to be proven, it simply exists, radiating outward and inviting respect without asking for it. To rise with unshakable dignity is to live in a way that is both powerful and serene. It is to be present without demanding attention, to be confident without arrogance, and to remain grounded no matter the storm. It is the ultimate form of self-respect, the silent command that tells the world, I am whole, I am worthy, and no one can diminish the value I carry within me. In this presence, you move through life with grace, strength, and an authority that words alone could never create.